Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council for Wednesday, the 24th of March 2021. Welcome councillors, welcome staff, welcome members of the gallery, including our pastor Chris. We have members of the community today providing a deputation. Thank you to those people from the South Bennett Rail Trail Group and to our media who were present, along with others. Mr. Barry Crosh, good to see you here again, Barry. Of course, Barry's been coming to council meetings for in excess of 20 years and always a welcome participant, along with Les. And Les, happy birthday to you today. Wonderful to have you here on your birthday. We look forward to sharing a cup of tea with you at morning tea time. And also a welcome to my parents, Trevor and Pauline Otto, who've come along to see their first council meeting, despite the fact that Dad did 51 years on the council, the longest serving employee for the South Bennett region. And Mum tells me that his average sick leave was less than one per year. So he took less than 50 sick leave days in 51 years and preferred to go to work and spread the flu to everybody else, apparently. So welcome to you all. Okay, so the meeting's now declared open. We do have one leave of absence request from Councillor Froloff, who's away today due to illness. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you very much, Councillor Duff, and second, I thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. We'd now like to invite Pastor Chris to come forward and deliver the opening prayers. Thank you, Pastor Chris.
As I said to Mayor Brett the other day, ministers and politicians have something in common. Our jaws rarely seize up from lack of use. I'm not going to talk a lot today, but I just want to share one thought before I pray for you. Jesus said that the way to work is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule. Not the negative version. Do what you would want them to do unto you, not what they do unto you. And that's not an easy thing to do. It requires, what God's heart and desire for us is to do the right thing out of our own choice, not being forced by others. To do that requires wisdom, insight, and love. Not the mushy romantic love, though that's got its place. The love that says to choose what is right and what is best for the object of the love. So this morning I would like to pray for you as you seek to do good in our community. I thank you for the opportunity to pray for you, that you have that wisdom and that strength. Almighty God, we thank you that you are the ruler of the entire universe and you care about people, but you have given them freedom. You've given us freedom to make choices, but you desire us to make good choices. Lord, for this council as they meet today, we pray for your wisdom for them. They have many decisions that have to be made. Some of them have implications for now and implications for the future, and holding those things in tension is not easy. We pray for wisdom. We pray for insight into truth and facts and things, because sometimes there's just so much information coming in, some of it from good sources, some of it from not so good sources. How to know which is true, which is not, which bits are the important bits, which aren't. That requires wisdom and insight. So we pray for wisdom and insight for each of the councillors as they make decisions. Lord, some of the decisions they have to make require strength of character and will, because sometimes they're not easy. Lord, we pray for strength for all of the councillors. But we also pray for a love, a desire to bubble up in them to do good for the community as best they understand it. Lord, it's easy to get distracted and think of this bit or that bit, but to desire the overall good, we pray for that love to be manifested in them. So we just pray your blessing on this council and their meetings today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you again.
On behalf of council and everyone in the attendance today, Pastor Chris, our sincere thanks. We know that you'll have a busy day. You're quite welcome to stay, but we'll understand if you have to leave. And God bless you. Thank you. I'd now like to call on Councillor Duff as the Indigenous Portfolio Holder to perform the recognition of traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Otto. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land. and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. We'll now move on to item 6. Straight to item 6. We have a deputation here from the South Bennett Rail Trail Users Association, and we'd like to invite them to have up to 15 minutes to share with us their story. Welcome Jason, Craig and Claire to Council, and we'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thanks for this opportunity to speak today. We'll be speaking in favour of the Highsville to Proston Rail Trail. My name is Jason Wyeth. I'll start the conversation or the speech. I'll hand over to Claire Kaepernick and our final speaker will be Craig. Firstly, let me say that since the Highsville to Proston branch line closed in 1993, property owners in this area have, for 28 years, utilised this land going about their business, providing for their families. So it is completely understandable that they may now be feeling concern and anxiety about any possible future changes to the status quo. I would also like to state that from the beginning, that on behalf of our association, the committee and its members, that we would not pursue this development if we thought for 1 minute that it would be in any way, or it would in any way harm anyone's livelihood or future business plans. Whilst we understand that some property owners have lodged objections to this development, especially around the ongoing issues of biosecurity, and these are valid concerns and need to be addressed carefully, we are confident that working together and seeking advice from experts in the field, that we can find a variety of robust and safe solutions that will mitigate this risk. We as an association are simply asking that you listen to all sides of this debate and make your decision based on facts, research and experts, not conjecture, innuendo and rumour. Our research in recent weeks has only confirmed this view. After reviewing several biosecurity risk management assessments from other Australian rail trails, and from our conversations with Oz Organics Limited, the peak body for organic registration in Australia, and emails from the NASAA Certified Organics, a leading organic certifier, we are more confident than ever that solutions can be found that will benefit all parties. I would now like to address the issues of farmers raised recently about privacy, vandalism, trespass, theft, and maintenance costs versus income. I would like to start with the issue of vandalism and trespass. To our association's knowledge, in the almost 4 years that the South Bennett Rail Trail has been open, there has not been a single complaint about trespass, theft, or vandalism of property. Over the same period of time, we have had very few complaints to our association about illegal trail usage, with only 2 reports of trail bike accessing the trails early after opening. Further to this, numerous studies have concluded that rail trails do not generate crime. Research and anecdotal evidence suggests that the development of rail trails tends to reduce crime by cleaning up the landscape and attracting people who use the trail for legitimate reasons, such as recreation and transport. Further backing up this statement, there have been no reports of trespass, theft or vandalism on the Murray to Mountains Rail Trail in Victoria since its establishment. Similarly, the Collie to Darken Rail Trail in Western Australia has had no incidents of crime. In the Clare Valley South Australian Riesling Trail has had only 2 incidents in over 25 years of operation. And finally, the Linville to Blackbuck section of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail has had 2 incidents simply involving trail bike access in over 10 years. This, despite the fact that large sections of this rail trail are unfenced. The feasibility study on pages 32 and 33 also highlights a number of options to assist in preventing crime on the rail trail corridor. These options have been tried and proven effective on many rail trails throughout Australia. The feasibility study again on pages 33 and 34 also highlights a number of solutions to offset privacy issues. Once again, I would like to state that these solutions have been implemented many times on many different rail trails and have proven to be effective over time. Further to this, the feasibility study on pages 33 to 44 gives dozens of possible and proven solutions from everything from biosecurity to construction impacts to splitting farm paddocks, chemical spraying, fencing and various trail management issues. Finally, I would like to urge councillors to contact property owners along the South Bennett Rail Trail to talk to them about their experiences with the issues. Many that we have spoken to, whilst initially against the SBRT development, now see the benefit that it brings to our region and have had no issues with the aforementioned concerns. From our own research, this change of heart seems to be a common occurrence with landowners bordering rural rail trails. I'd now like to address the issues of maintenance costs versus income. A full construction cost breakdown of the feasibility study is available in the feasibility study. However, I'd like to firstly point out the feasibility does allow for $345,800 for single and double fencing of the entire rail trail route, grids, gates and other structures, safety, directional and warning signage and privacy screenings. The predicted income from the finished rail trail is estimated at $786,960, with an estimated 3,500 to 4,500 extra visitors coming to our area per year. I would like to point out that this dollar figure and visitor number is for the entire South Burnett, with the bulk of this income from tourists staying an extra night or nights in the South Burnett due to this development. Maintenance costs need to be considered in any discussion, as the maintenance costs will fall back to the ratepayers of the South Burnett. The cost of maintaining this rail trail has been estimated at $37,080 per year. Our association would like to point out that even if the income stated earlier is only half of what is predicted at $400,000, this still represents a tenfold return on maintenance investments for the ratepayers of the South Burnett. In closing, this development stands to bring much needed tourist dollars not only to Highsville and Proston areas but to the entire South Burnett region, giving tourists another reason to spend more time in these locations. This development adds a valuable asset to our growing cycling, adventure tourism attractions within the South Burnett. It will encourage visitors of our region to possibly stay another day, putting much needed tourist dollars into our drought-affected small business communities. Further to the economic advantages the rail trail would bring, other flow-on benefits would occur. Health benefits to our local communities, both physical and mental health. Livability benefits, certainly for the Highsville and Proston areas. Environmental benefits and educational benefits and opportunities. Furthermore, the development fits very well within multiple sections of South Burnett Regional Council's own draft corporate plan 2021 to 2006 under the following sections. Enhanced livability and lifestyle, EC1 and 11, providing key infrastructure to our small towns and villages, IN5, and growing our region's economy and prosperity, GR2, 4 and 13. Finally, I would like to read a passage from one of our letters of support that our association has received. The existing Kilkeven to Kingaroy Rail Trail, is a valuable asset to the South Burnett region for community health and wellbeing, and is a popular recreation activity that generates tourism and therefore employment opportunities. I consistently meet and talk with tourists on and around the trail who are staying at local accommodation, visiting friends or family, or travelling through with caravans. I also know many farmers and property owners along the trail who have nothing but positive comments to make about the trail. In many cases, they utilise it themselves. I've heard zero complaints from farmers who board the current rail trail, as it exists in harmony with its surroundings, and it could be objectively argued helps improve upon its aesthetics. A simple search of the internet and social media demonstrates that the growing rail trail network throughout Queensland and Australia is the envy of many other nations. The section from Highsville to Proston would only serve to value add to this important community and tourism infrastructure, helping build local economic resilience, plus improved health and wellbeing for local residents in the future. As South Burnett Regional Council representatives and leaders in our communities, I would urge you to support this project and to approach concerns with an open mind, utilising facts from relevant government departments and experts in the field of rail trail development and biosecurity. Thank you.
I would like to thank the South Burnett Regional Council for this opportunity to speak in favour of the Highsville to Proston Rail Trail, because that's what this is. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to expand tourism in our region. It's an opportunity to enhance the livability of our area. It's an opportunity to improve the physical health and mental well-being of our residents. It's an opportunity to create a lasting facility to benefit the South Burnett for generations to come. And at the moment, it's an opportunity going begging due to the opposition of a few vocal opponents who've never tried our existing South Burnett Rail Trail. They've never taken the time to chat with other locals out on the trail who they may never have crossed paths with in their regular day-to-day activities. They've never taken the time to chat with visitors like Paul, who I met on Monday, who thinks the facilities of our current trail are incredible and he can't wait to come back and do the whole thing from Kingaroy to Kilkeven. Imagine how long he would stay if the Highsville to Proston Rail Trail was a reality. Years ago, when the original rail line was proposed, a group of forward-thinking locals could see the benefits for future generations and grab the opportunity in front of them with both hands. I would like to think that we are as forward-thinking as our South Burnett forebears and can grab the opportunity that's currently in front of us and take a positive step forward for the betterment of the economic, social, physical and mental well-being of the South Burnett community as a whole, now and into the future. Thank you.
We're asking the Council for your in-principle support for the Huysville to Proston Rail Trail. This would be a valuable piece of infrastructure that can provide numerous benefits to the community as a whole. The increased business due to tourism has been clearly stated in the independent report on the trail. It should be pointed out that this will particularly help the town of Proston by leveraging the existing dam traffic, which currently has little reason to enter and spend time in the town itself. What I believe is a more significant benefit of this trail, however, is the role that it plays in the physical and mental health of the community, the local community. The South Burnett Rail Trail has shown that it has increased participation of local residents in walking and cycling solely due to being a safe, well-suited facility. Many of these are older residents and parents with young children. While hard to quantify, the mental health benefits are critical. As a farmer myself, who has a fairly socially isolated occupation and of an age and level of ball skills that makes many sporting groups out of reach, the South Burnett Rail Trail provides a community contact and support that would not have been available otherwise. The opportunity to talk with others after good weeks or bad weeks does more for my mental well-being than many of the intentionally targeted initiatives that have been tried. Suicide prevention is one of the Council's key priorities, and this is how it can be addressed. The small number of opponents to this proposed project have raised a number of reasons against it, so I would like to address those. Firstly, this is state-owned land, and it always has been. I've travelled on this train line as a child, and my father recalls watching steam trains start spot fires as they built up steam to attack some of the steeper grades. Thankfully, this is unlikely to happen with a bicycle trail. The majority of landholders simply border the line in the same way that we border a road, and approximately 5 properties have the line running through them in the same way that many of us own farms that sit either side of a roadway. No one is losing land. Regarding the complainant who stated in the media that it may threaten his EU certification, Burnett today, 13th of the 1st, this certification requires refraining from hormonal growth promotants in cattle, Meat and Livestock Australia. The likelihood of a rail trail somehow causing a steer to be caught in a head bale in a yard and having an HGP accidentally applied under the skin into its ear is not strong. This is fear-mongering. We've contacted 2 organic certification bodies, as Jason's mentioned, who have said that a rail trail would not harm certification. But they did say that as the existing corridor is owned by someone else, it may need to be excluded anyway from the certification process. In terms of biosecurity, after consultation with biosecurity advisors from AgForce, the main issue of concern would be weeds. The fact that this would be a contained corridor means that the probability of a new weed being introduced and spread is a comparable risk to that imposed by roads and driveways. Having both sides fenced and a defined pathway will keep this risk very low. Improved council and landholder access will actually enhance monitoring and control. The likelihood of ticks being spread is again low, as horses are considered low-risk animals for cattle ticks, and cyclists I would think would be pretty low risk as well. Any landholder who wishes to maintain a tick-free status within a ticky area, which this location is, would simply need to treat the rail corridor in the same way as all of the other boundaries with neighbours and roadways, all of which would provide as much of a risk or more than a fenced rail corridor. Where landholders who own the land either side of the corridor are concerned, each case will have its own solution. If automatic access is needed across the trail, a short section of unfenced trail with gates at either end is an option, just like a roadway or a creek crossing. For the most part, a fully fenced corridor will enhance land use, providing more paddocks for spelling pasture and an all-weather lane for movement of stock. It's in the interest of both landholders and the rail trail to continue to graze the trail from time to time, as this keeps vegetation at a suitable height. It could be proposed that as part of the development, farmers be given support in establishing new watering points to further enhance their properties, creating a win-win situation. In all of the other rail trails established throughout the country, including our existing South Burnett Rail Trail, initial fears have shown to be unfounded. We ask that the Council step back and look at what is known about the rail trails that exist and how well they work, and provide your in-principle support. This one will be no different. They are an environmentally friendly, low-maintenance, low-impact facility that benefits the community at large and harms no one. They promote tourism, business, physical health, mental health, and foster a sense of community. How can we say no to this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, South Burnett Rail Trail Association members. That was very comprehensive, and of course Council will put our mind to that in due process. Quite welcome to stay at the meeting if you'd like to do so, but we'd understand if you have to leave, if you have other commitments. Okay, Council, we'll now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is declarations of prescribed or declarable conflict of interest. We'll go around the room. Councillor Potter, let's work through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, Councillor Danita Potter, inform this meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 18.3, alleged inappropriate councillor conduct complaint investigation and recommendation. The nature of my declarable conflict of interest is as follows. The complainant in relation to the investigation, the subject of this item of business, is a participant in a petition to the Minister for Local Government for an investigation into and dismissal of myself, Councillor Jones, Froloff and Henson. The contents of this petition are now with the Office of the Independent Assessor for consideration. Given these actions of the complainant, it may be perceived that I might have a conflict between my personal interest and the public interest that could inappropriately influence the way I might vote on this matter. Having regard to the nature of my declarable conflict of interest, I propose to leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while the matter is being discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Next Councillor Shoemaker. Go around the room. We'll deal with these, I think, in one batch, Mr CEO. Yep, let's work through them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think my only conflict of interest relates to point 14.1, the Kingroy Aerodrome Air Park proposal, which I raised at the committee meeting. Just that I own a property on Peterson Drive.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor, I think, Mr CEO, that property you said you own that. We have addressed this matter in a previous standing committee meeting. Do we need to readdress such?
We don't need to readdress it today because the circumstances will note it, but it was also the actions of the standing committee for the purposes of this report stand. So that one's been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Duly noted in the minutes, and you'll be able to remain and participate as resolved by Council at the most recent standing committee meeting. Thank you. Councillor Jones, anything from you? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I, Councillor Gavin Jones, inform this meeting that I have declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 18.3, alleged inappropriate councillor conduct complaint, investigation and recommendation. The nature of my declarable conflict of interest is as follows. The complainant in relation to the investigation, the subject of this item of business, is a participant in a petition to the Minister for Local Government for an investigation into and dismissal of myself and Councillors Potter, Froloff and Henson. The contents of the petition are now at the Office of the Independent Assessor for consideration. Given these actions of the complainant, it may be perceived that I might have a conflict between my personal interests and the public interest that could inappropriately influence the way I might vote on this matter. Having regard to the nature of my declarable conflict of interest, I propose to leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while this matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We'll keep moving on. Councillor Henson, anything from you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Scott Henson, inform this meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 18.3, alleged inappropriate councillor conduct, complaint investigation and recommendation. The nature of my declarable conflict of interest is that I am the councillor subject to this investigation. Having regard to the nature of my declarable conflict of interest, I propose to leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while this matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Duff.
I, Councillor Kathy Duff, inform this meeting that at Council's meeting held on the 24th of February 2021, I informed the meeting of a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 18.3, alleged inappropriate councillor conduct, complaint, investigation and recommendation. The nature of my declarable conflict of interest is as follows. The complainant in relation to the investigation has previously lodged a complaint against me to the Office of the Independent Assessor about my conduct as a councillor. Given these actions of the complainant, it may be perceived that I might have a conflict between my personal interests and the public interest that could inappropriately influence the way I might vote on this matter. As per Council's Resolution 2021-242, carried at Council's meeting of 24th February 2021, Council's CEO made application to the Minister seeking the Minister's approval pursuant to Section 150 EV of the Local Government Act 2009 for me to participate in deciding this particular matter, including being present while the matter is discussed and voted on. By a letter dated the 19th of March 2021, the Minister provided that approval. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, my statement as well. I, Mayor Brett Otto, inform this meeting that at Council's meeting held on 24 February 2021, I informed the meeting of a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 18.3, alleged inappropriate councillor conduct, complaint, investigation and recommendation. The nature of my declarable conflict of interest is as follows. The complainant in relation to the investigation has previously lodged a complaint against me to the Office of the Independent Assessor about my conduct as a councillor. Given these actions of the complainant, it may be perceived that I might have a conflict between my personal interests and the public interest that could inappropriately influence the way I might vote on this matter. As per Council's Resolution 2021/242, carried at Council's meeting of 24 February 2021, Council CEO made application to the Minister, seeking the Minister's approval pursuant to Section 150 EV of the Local Government Act of 2009 for me to participate in deciding this particular matter, including being present while the matter is discussed and voted on. By letter dated 19 March 2021, the Minister provided that approval. Mr CEO, I might get your guidance on dealing with these conflicts of interest now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, councillors, we'll go through. The letter was received this week, and as last meeting, I advised council we hadn't had a formal reply to our resolution of January and February. We received that, and I would acknowledge and thank the Minister for his consideration of our request. During that, as through the declarations, both Councillors Duff and Otto have been given ministerial exemption to proceed and stay in the meeting while it's discussed and voted upon. That gives us 3 councillors in the room, which still does not give us quorum. So council's actions have been in every step of this way in accordance with the Local Government Act, and we will continue to do so. So there is, Lynelle, a proposed resolution today that will give us the path out of this process. The council notes that 4 out of the 7 councillors have informed the meeting, and Councillor Frolof's absence today. We have 3, but I understand she advised in accordance with the Act that she still carried a conflict. They have a declarable matter, a declarable conflict of interest in this matter. Council notes that those 3 declaring councillors have stated that if discussion and a decision on the matter proceeds, They will leave and stay away from the place where the meeting is being held while the matter is discussed and voted upon. Council notes that Mayor and Councillor Duff have ministerial approval pursuant to Section 150 EV of the Local Government Act 2009 to participate in deciding this particular matter, including being present while the matter is discussed and voted upon. And that would be along with Councillor Shoemaker, who has no declarable interest in this matter. So point 4, that as a consequence of the majority of councillors comprising each of council's 3 standing committees, which rules out, and I'll come back to the Act references in a moment, declaring a declarable conflict of interest in relation to this matter, Council notes that pursuant to Section 150 EU3 of the Local Government Act 2009, Council is unable to delegate deciding this matter under Section 257(2)(b) of the Act to any of those committees. So in point 5, that accordingly, and this is now the change with the ministerial approval, pursuant to Section 150 EU2A and Section 257(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2009, Council delegate the matter, deciding the matter to the Mayor. Mr Mayor, if you may just indulge me for a moment so that people have a clear understanding of the legislation that we're required to work under. 150 EU Part 4 of the Local Government Act is the procedure if no quorum for deciding the matter because prescribed conflicts or interests or declarable conflicts of interest. So Section 2 is relevant, and this is no flexibility in this. The local government must do one of the following: delegate deciding the matter under 257 unless the matter cannot be delegated under that section, which is point 5, which we are now able to do, that we have not been able to do for the last 2 meetings. Decide by resolution to defer the matter to a later meeting, which won't change the outcome. It will still have to be decided by council. Decide by resolution not to decide the matter and take no further action in relation to this matter. Now on point C, Council back in January contacted the relevant independent authorities, being the Council Conduct Tribunal and the Office of the Independent Assessor. Under the legislation, Council must decide this, and the process we've been through over the last 2 months with the Minister and the Department of Local Government, Council has to decide this. This has come back to Council. This is the legislation. This is not Council deciding it wants to decide it. So the only option available to Council is A, and I will draw your point again for emphasis, the local government must. This is not discretionary. So point 3, the local government must not delegate deciding the matter to an entity if the entity or majority of its members have a personal interest that are equivalent in nature. So that all our standing committees are automatically ruled out because we have the same issue and we will not have quorum in the standing committee. A councillor does not contravene Section 150 EK1, 150 EM2, 150 EQ2A or 3A, or 150 ES5 by participating in the decision on being present while the matter is discussed and voted upon for the purposes of delegating the matter or making the decision under subsection 2B or C. So that is how the councillors have remained in the room for the procedure, well, I'll call them procedural, but for the resolutions of council to refer to the minister. This is now a resolution of council to delegate the matter so that we can proceed with it. 257, delegation of local government powers. Under 257(1), there's a series, Mayor, Chief Executive Officer, Standing Committee, Chairperson of a committee that could be delegated to. That section doesn't apply to this because the Act, again, is very, very specific. So there's a very specific framework. Delegation of local government powers, 257(2). However, a local government may only delegate a power to make a decision about a councillor's conduct under Section 150AG2, the Mayor or a standing committee. There is no other ability to delegate this to anyone else. It is literally, under the legislation, it forces, we could delegate it to the standing committee, but again, we come back to the same point that we do not have quorum and we cannot deal with it at a standing committee. Therefore, delegating it to the standing committee will not resolve the matter and would be probably ultra vires or beyond our ability to do so. So here we are today. Councillor Henson had indicated prior to the meeting that he was going to step out for this section of the meeting because this is now no longer a referral to the minister. This is the delegation of an act. Whilst he is entitled to under the legislation, he had, in accordance with the Act and conflict of interest, indicated he was going to step out for the decision for propriety. So, thank you, Councillor. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to field any questions, but this is where we are, and this is the path forward now to deal with the matter.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and of course, that's a very good explanation as to how the Local Government Act of 2009 applies to this matter. So, Mr. CEO, is it correct to say that the Office of the Independent Assessor, the Tribunal, and the Minister do not have the authority under the legislation to decide this matter? It has to come back to council to decide. Is that what the legislation tells us?
Correct, Mayor. So at this point, this matter, because it's deemed alleged inappropriate conduct, it comes back to council, and we're running through the section. Basically, I won't read them all, but 150 of the Act, which in all its variations, and there's some other bits. We actually very conscious of the matter still yet to be resolved. Is that we did make contact with other agencies when we got because the investigation was conducted by the Councillor Conduct Tribunal. We did make contact at that point in time as to what our options were, and we were advised it must come back to council.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So this matter must be dealt with by council as required under the Local Government Act of 2009. Councillors, is there anything in that explanation of the legislation in terms of the process that you'd like to have clarified at this point in time? Okay, nothing there, councillors? No? Councillor Duff, have you got something?
I'm I think you've already answered the question, but it just seems like that we have only one option, and that is that the mayor decides the outcome, which I think is challenging and unfortunate because being one of the fellow councillors, I just think it's not a good situation, but I don't know that we have any other choice.
Thanks, Councillor. Legislative reform in this process, but that's a different discussion. Yeah, the only not confidence I can give, but you're correct. So under what Section 150 EU2, we must do one of three things. A and B can no longer satisfy the B and C, my apologies, can no longer satisfy resolving the matter. So that leaves us with A, which is the delegation. While there's conflict and declared conflicts under the Act, the matter cannot be resolved through formal meeting, so delegation. That provision was placed in the Act, I suppose, to deal with issues such as this. We've made representation to a range of different agencies in the department, and yes, this is the position we are now in.
Right, thank you, Mr. CEO. So it would be clear from what you've indicated to me that the Section 257 2A provides for the mayor to decide to have this matter delegated, delegation of power to decide, make a decision about a councillor's conduct under Section 150 AG to the mayor or to a standing committee of the local government. But as there will not be a quorum in the standing committee, it would seem that the only option here is to, in fact, delegate the power to the mayor in accordance with Section 257 2A. And I suppose that does leave me with a bit of discomfort in terms of, as the mayor now, having to decide on one of my colleagues, but I could certainly, should that be the path that council chooses to take, provide an undertaking that would be done with all due care and diligence in taking into consideration all matters that have been brought to the attention of council through the appropriate investigations by the OIA and the external investigator. Okay, so Mr. CEO, back to you. So where does that leave us at this point in time?
So we've got, so the other party that conducted the independent investigation, which council is receiving, is the Councillor Conduct Tribunal. So that's for the sake of the gallery and for those watching. The council, so the official recommendation, so my recommendation to council, which we would need moved and seconded, is those 5 points I read out at the beginning of this process. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution proposed there. Do we have a council? We would need a mover for that. We have a mover? Councillor Schumacher, you have a question, sorry?
Yeah, I just,
Question first, thank you.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to confirm, and I fully understand the work CEO Mark's done with regards to this, thank you. Just having that Councillor Potter and Councillor Jones both declared a conflict of interest and that they would leave the meeting, I just want to confirm that they are actually able to stay for this recommendation.
Certainly, councillor. That's 150 EU 4. A councillor does not convene sections, and I won't go through all the sections. They specifically wrote that bit. I do acknowledge they specifically wrote that in because where you hit an impasse, I use the term procedurally, which is technically incorrect. It's a resolution of council, but allows for a resolution of council to plot a path forward. So that we appreciate the department putting that into the Act when they wrote it. But yes, no, a councillor does not convene. It is quite correct.
Is that clear, Councillor Schumacher?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that. Certainly, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation on the table, the motion at hand.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Okay, councillors, those in favour? Those against? Okay, resolution has been carried. 4 votes to 1, with Councillor Otto voting against. So we'll bring Councillor Henson back in. Thank you all. And the matter will be now dealt with in accordance with that resolution, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Council. We'll just wait for Councillor Henson to return to the room and then we'll move on. Councillors, to item 6.2. Okay, thank you, Councillor Henson. Welcome back. Councillor Henson's now returned to the meeting. Councillor, 6.2 is a petition for construction of a footpath for pedestrian traffic to transverse safely between the 2 major residential areas of Highsville as part of the Corporate Plan 2021/2026 and can be found at page 7 on your agenda. Mr. CEO, could you lead us through this one as well, if you could? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Petition. We would deal with this as we've been dealing with the others. We're getting into a pretty good routine, if I may say so. Accept it today so that we can advise the petitioners it's been accepted. We'll bring back a more, well, I won't say detailed report. A report will come back to a standing committee, seek direction on where council wants to go with it, and then we can go from there.
Right, very good. Thank you, Mr. CEO. So you have it as presented there, councillors. That the petition be received and referred to the CEO to determine appropriate action. Do we have a mover? Thank you. Mover? No? Yes, Councillor Schumacher. Yep, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Okay, councillors, those wishing to speak for or against the motion. Councillor Duff.
Thank you. I just wanted to move an amendment. I know that the CEO has actually declared that it would come back to council, but I just think that that needs to be in the wording of the recommendation, because sometimes I think the petitioners feel like it just goes, it's up to the CEO, but I think the council ultimately needs to have that report brought back. So I'd just like to have those words added and a report be brought back to council.
Thanks, Mayor. Council would be looking at, yeah, by all means, it's the process now is to do that. But anyway, if it gives a greater degree of comfort, petition be received and referred to CEO or committee for consideration. So, so petition be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for a further report to a committee, to a standing committee, please. That would be lovely. Yep. And I'm trying to think of a petition that we haven't brought back or actioned since I've been here, just for, yep. And it's a good point, councillor, because I think those days are long gone.
Thank you, Mr CEO. We're certainly using our standing committees to good effect in dealing with these petitions. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker, are you comfortable with that change to the resolution?
Yes, Mr Mayor,
You are.
absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Okay, anyone else wish to speak for or against? Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.3 is the Kingaroy Transformation Project petition. Can be found at 8 on the agenda. Mr CEO, over to you again. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, there's not too much more. So this was discussed at the standing committee, and again, as part of, we've popped it into the front end rather than putting it in the body of the report because it was an outcome of a petition. And again, this is where we're going, where I'm trying to go with council's consent, is bringing so that closes the loop so the petitioners can see where it ended up. They may miss it at a standing committee. It's in council's hands for direction.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr CEO. So for full disclosure, this matter was considered at the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee held on the 17th of March 2021, and pursuant to that, the recommendation is that the Chief Executive Officer be delegated to respond to the petitioners, one, detailing key facts and information within the report that identifies the project objectives in relation to renewal and modernisation of public assets that is supported by asset management principles, economic enablement, livability and inclusivity, and clearly demonstrates the funding for the project is fully available from both external grants, funded depreciation for infrastructure projects and unallocated restricted cash as resolved by Council, and does not place the Council under financial stress, and that Council invites the petitioner, organisation and community members to meet with Council and openly discuss the information provided and offer an opportunity to answer any further questions they may have regarding the project, and that Council workshop the third-party independent report that has been prepared by Bellwether of the project costings. Now, councillors, do we have a mover for such? Yep, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Jones. Those wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I spoke against this at the Standing Committee, and I do so again today because I think Section 2, I'm concerned about the ramifications, the financial stress that this will place on Council, so I'm not prepared to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Other councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion we have in front of us before we go to the vote? No. Look, councillors, I again spoke against this at the Standing Committee meeting. I would again indicate that I won't be supporting this motion on the basis that I also have concerns that the allocation from the unallocated restricted cash could indeed place Council under financial stress. I'm not convinced at this stage that I have sufficient evidence to indicate that the statement here is in fact correct, and as such will not be supporting the motion. Councillors, right of reply, Councillor Shoemaker, as we've got the mover, did you want to reply before we go to the vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I spoke very passionately about this at the Standing Committee, and certainly am grateful for the information that's been brought forward and the opportunity to reconsider. The reality is the decision has been made by Council, and it's my understanding that the decision has been actioned by Council, and the petition has asked Council to rescind that decision. And the reality is that this Council's not in a position to do that. I do fully support the Kingaroy Transformation Project. I do see there is, we had 55 business owners last night actually meet in the town hall and talk about how important this project is for the future of Kingaroy and the South Burnett. I do understand the concerns around our finances. However, having read carefully the quarterly report that's before Council and workshop this in detail, and the opportunity to come back and review those project costings, the discussions we've had about reporting and maintaining, I do see and I understand, the concerns around project budget overrun and time will always be something that we as councillors have to keep our eye on, absolutely. But I do believe from what I've seen that the project team, are working very hard to keep that information flowing into Council. that we will be the first ones to know if there is an issue with this project. And by all means, I think the work that has been done to date to manage this project is exceptional. We as a council certainly have a lot of challenges ahead of us when it comes to our finances. We're in the thick of budget discussions, and every single week I go home and go, it's tough. But I know the work's been done. I know we're going to monitor this very carefully and closely. And as a councillor for Kingaroy, I'm fully supportive of the project and fully behind it. So no, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing further to add. Like I said, I spoke about this at the committee meeting. I feel we're too far in to go back now. And if anything, my opinion is KTP has started, shovels are in the ground. It's actually now about what's next for Kingaroy in this region. We get so stuck, Councillor Jones says it all the time, looking in the rear view mirror, we're not looking ahead. And I feel like we're actually revisiting this is not going to do anybody any good. We will maintain sound project management. We're going to do a good job. We're going to deliver this project on time and on budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Councillor Duff, you voted in favour. You said you speak against. Are you voting in favour, Councillor Duff? Oh, sorry, Councillor Henson, I couldn't see your light. Sorry. Please proceed. Councillor Duff, are you okay? Did you want a cup of coffee? Council, well, let's backtrack. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for your right of reply as the mover of the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried 4 votes to 2 with Councillor Otto and Councillor Duff voting against. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 7.1, which is the minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of February 2021, can be found at 10. And council, the minutes are there, and I would hereby move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillors wishing to raise issues, concerns in relation to the minutes? No? Okay. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillors, 8.1 is the business outstanding table for ordinary council meeting at 42. Councillor, you have that there. It's been presented to you. And of course, for the information of those in the gallery and watching online, the business outstanding table for ordinary council meetings is a schedule of resolutions determined by council at these meetings. That register is then kept. It's effectively an outstanding resolutions register. So it shows what has been resolved by council, what decisions have council taken previously in these meetings, and what action has been taken by the organisation under the direction of the CEO to implement such. Council, recommendation is that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. And a seconder, thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors wishing to raise questions, comments? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just asking about on page 45, the mayoral request CEO Parks and Gardens. And I noticed that it's been changed, and the update has been changed from the 19th of March to the 7th of May. And again on page 52, the illegal occupation of private land, the update and to come back has been changed from the 19th of March to the 30th of April. And it says that Kimberly Donahue has made that decision. I'm just wondering how that can happen without that coming back through a standing committee, or how somebody can make that decision. That's just one question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Firstly, I'll just, without sounding like I'm correcting, Kimberly will have put the note on there, and that's just so there's no decision been made by a staff member as far as that. I think it was Councillor Shoemaker at the standing committee raised it, and it certainly was a good point. I'll throw to the General Manager because the Parks and Gardens one resolution was quite specific. So they are running a little bit behind as discussed at the standing committee, but that will be back to the April standing committee. So that one I know is a delay rather than a change. So when you see those comments on their target date changed by, that's administrative. So the language is probably, I apologise for, but that's just that. I'll throw to Peter with the other one because I don't have the same visibility on that one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I had the same issue, I suppose, with the wording because, yeah, as Kim's put comments on there that we're expecting those back, and just the way it does come back, it does look like that. So, yeah, I'm not sure if we can system-wise change those notes around that it doesn't look like she's making those decisions. But, yeah, so with the efficiency, we talked about at the standing committee that the guys are doing that, looking a bit more into the plant uses and efficiencies, the internal structures, rather than just coming back with a report that we need X amount of extra resources to look at. We're looking a bit more detailed into the internal workings of the gangs and efficiency around plant hire. So that's taking longer than initially thought. So that was the discussion that we would bring that back when it is we're in a position to do so.
Thank you, Mr. CEO and General Manager. Mr. CEO, do we need to resolve, I suppose, bed down a resolution to support that change of date, or is that a procedure? It's just a mechanical matter?
There's no necessity to, Mayor. The resolution still stands and it's acknowledged that they're running it slightly behind time. Certainly, those reports will come back to the April standing committees. So what would that be, about 3 weeks away? I think by the time it'll come back to community.
So what we're saying is that both reports will come back to the April Standing Committee meeting in about 3 weeks on both matters, being the report on the service plan for Parks and Gardens, as well as in relation to those properties, illegal occupation on properties. Councillor, yes?
I'm sorry, that is correct, and yeah, I've got them tagged for agendas for those standing committees.
Thank you. Councillor Duff, further questions, comments on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wanting to know with regards to the Coolangatta sale yards. I'm not sure, but I thought there was something to do with the dip yards, like we had some outcome with the dip yards and what we were doing with those, and I just noticed there's nothing through any of this business arising that we've moved forward with the dip yards, and I know there's a lot of people out in the community interested in what's going to happen with those dip yards, so I'm just wondering where we're at with that. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Smith. Yeah, so that resolution, there was a resolution of council prior to the Info Council, so it's a resolution. It's still live, but it wasn't included since we've recording these. So what we're doing with those, we're actually currently getting some assessments done. So we are moving forward with the leasing of those, of the other dips. So we're just currently getting assessment done of the Wandai dip, the Proston dip, just as far as a condition assessment, so that when we are tendering, that we've actually got some up-to-date information, because they've been non-operational for a number of years. They're just providing some detail, so we do expect those tenders to be released in the coming months. But yeah, the lease officer is basically, that's one of the tasks on her list at the moment. But it is a prior resolution of council, so there is still a live resolution there.
Yep.
The other one through council's direction, there was the besides the BBRF, just as an adjunct to that, and also there was the report on future commercial opportunities for the sale yards. So that's due date is 31st of March, and so we'll be bringing that back very shortly as well. So that one's on my list. Well, when I say on my list, Pete is helping me,
Yeah.
but so that's probably, I won't say overtaken the other ones, but to the degree of that commercial information that council will be presented will also then complement that previous resolution. So that work's been ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. In light of the fact that we do have a resolution that is live, could I request that be included on the business outstanding table for the next meeting, Mr. CEO? Would that be? The old one, if we can, the old resolution from 2019. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Duff, anything further on that? Okay, any other councillors wish to speak in relation to the motion? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just chasing an update. I met with an incredible group of like-minded people on Saturday afternoon and sat through a climate for change discussion. And I think there were so many learnings in that discussion, and it's just got me thinking. And I'm very grateful that Council has resolved to join the Queensland Climate Resilience Council's program. And I just wondered, obviously we moved the resolution to participate in that. I just wondered who was leading that and what will come back to Council.
Thanks, councillor. You've got me. We've got the letter off. I haven't updated the table. There's a couple I've got about the algo resolutions are due in on Friday, which I've just got to talk to a couple of people about to finish them off, just because they've got greater knowledge in a couple of spaces than I have. So there's that one, the climate change one. So we've zipped the letter back. I think it was LJQ, but whoever initiated it. Then the next stage will be sitting down and have a bit of a natter about what is next. And I don't have the full answer for that, but yep, we've told them that we're in and looking to engage fully going forward.
Thank you. So hearing you, Mr. CEO, that will come back to a standing committee at some point. Yeah, fabulous. I think it was great to hear there's real support in our community for that move, and I look forward to further discussions about how we can be a part of that.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The very first item on that report is, it might be a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to GMO May with regards to the Big Peanut sculpture at Lions Park. I'm just wondering where we're at with that and whether that's going to be up and done by mid-year. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the sculpture is well underway, and we do have a report to the next standing committee. Actually, I know that one because I know it's been written, sitting on my desk for approval. So yeah, there's just an update coming to the next standing committee on the associated parts that we're doing with it, the plinth and the upgrades to the park to coincide with that. But the sculpture is well underway with the being built. So yeah, we do expect within the next 2 months that it'll come to fruition.
Thank you, General Manager. Okay, councillors, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.1, council appointees for the 2021 Anzac Day ceremonies at 55. The recommendation is that from the standing committee meeting, that following council representatives attend the respective ceremonies and carry out responsibilities as required on behalf of council. Pleasing to see Councillor Shoemaker, we've now got you in there. Sincere apologies again for that. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Second, thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? No changes. Comfortable with that? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And of course, for the gallery and others watching, that schedule of attendees at the Anzac Day ceremonies is included in the agenda. All councillors will be out and about on Anzac Day, importantly participating in that extremely important day for our community and indeed for our nation. Moving on now to 9.2, administrative amendments to council policy and associated documents, organisational branch name change at 59. Council, this was discussed at the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting, and the recommendation is that the council endorse the administrative amendments to policy reflecting the branch title change from name change from social and corporate performance to corporate services, including associated staff position titles. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. A second. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.3, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Investment Policy 2021/2022, statutory 009, can be found at 60. And again, councillors, this was presented to the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting recently. The policy is as presented in the agenda. Recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Investment Policy 2021/2022, statutory 009, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder? A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay, councillors wishing to speak for or against, questions or comments in relation to the policy? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a question, and it was remiss of me not to ask it at the standing committee when we discussed this, but I just wanted to clarify, and just for the purpose of the, and I already spoke to the general manager about this particular question about the local banks getting an opportunity to have an invest, like for council to invest in the local banks, because I know that prior to amalgamation, I've had one of the local banks said to me, you know, council pulled out, and that made a huge difference to their business. It really put a hole in their business. And could council consider using the local banks? And I know it's probably, you know, through our procurement and whatever we do it, but I just wanted to clarify where the local banks sit with the opportunity for council to invest.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Duff. Yes, we do, at the moment, as the Mayor alluded to at the Standing Committee, the interest rates at the moment are at the lowest probably in history. So the local banks aren't as competitive. We have to get value for money for our investors. At the moment, currently we have 37 million invested. So when we do go and look for rates again, when the interest rates start coming up, we most definitely give all the local, or as in locals, as in national banks everywhere, the opportunity to provide their interest rates to us. And of course we choose the highest there, but also in line with our investment policy, that they must be A1. They're classified as per our investment policy, you know, which minimises the risk of our investment.
Yeah, thank you very much, General Manager. If I could just confirm for those in the gallery, those watching, that General Manager has confirmed that this policy certainly does make provision for council to invest with the major banks that meet the A1 category. However, at this point in time, council does have a $37 million invested with the Queensland Treasury Corporation on the basis that that is ratepayers' money, and under our policy we do have an obligation to get the best rate of return for our local ratepayers on their cash in terms of our investment decision. So for that reason, the assessment was done, the opportunity was given, Queensland Treasury Corporation were selected on the basis that they were A1 and gave us the best return to our ratepayers. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm hoping I articulated that correctly, General Manager. Thank you for your insight. Okay, councillors, so we have the motion on the table. Any other questions, speakers for or against? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item, councillors, is 9.4 at 67, minutes of the Corporate Risk and Audit Advisory Committee meeting held on Thursday, 25 February 2021, can be found at 67. Councillors, you've had the agenda, you've had opportunity to read those minutes. Recommendation is that, and of course this went through the Executive Finance and Corporate Advisory Committee meeting, most recently, was looked at and discussed there, and as such the recommendation is that the council endorse the minutes of the Corporate Risk and Audit Advisory Committee meeting held on Thursday, 25 February 2021 as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Duff. Okay, speakers for or against, questions, concerns in relation to the minutes? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to make council aware. I really see enormous value in the new independent members who have been appointed to the Audit Committee. The first meeting that we had was absolutely fabulous, and you'll see throughout the meeting minutes, it was great to actually see the committee come together and to really challenge us as a council to think about some of the things we're doing, the operation at hand, and really take a deep dive on some of the risks that we as a council face. So I really look forward to being a part of this committee over the next couple of years. I think there is much to be learned and gained from the independent members who have been involved, and I see enormous value for council in terms of their appointment to the committee. I'd just like to thank and acknowledge GM Susan and her team. I know Carolyn Nunson has worked really hard to really turn what council was doing from an audit perspective on its head. And I think going forward that this, for a council of our size, this is a really important function of council. It absolutely needs a detailed, actually taking a good hard look at what we're doing and having those insights from somebody from outside the region with enormous expertise has been enormously valuable. So I'd just like to thank the committee, and I look forward to future future meetings. I think there's going to be a lot of great outcomes. If anything, our biggest challenge might be actually steering the committee's eagerness. So I look forward to what's to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. And again, for those in the gallery and watching online, the minutes which are here to be received. To give you a bit of an understanding, the sort of matters that are covered by the Internal Audit Committee, which of course now includes those newly appointed independent members, so we have a greater body of independent members. We had some extremely good applicants to be on that panel, some extremely well qualified and experienced auditors from right across the country applied, so we've got some wonderful contributors to make sure that we've got a very robust internal audit process. And some of the matters considered at the last meeting in general business included things such as the 2021 external audit plan, of course the appointment of those internal auditors, the status of the implementation of current internal audit recommendations, a cybersecurity internal audit, establishing the status of council's corporate risk registers and treatment plans, business systems projects, asset updates, leave liability reports. So you can see that internal audit committee, they do work across a whole range of issues associated with risk management for council. So a very, very important role they play, as I said, in keeping those processes very robust and rigorous in making sure that council's complying with all of the legislations, regulations and accounting standards. So councillors, any further comments? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Moving on to 9.5, Council Resolution for Repeated Operational Expenditure, Sole Suppliers and Original Equipment Manufacturers, can be found at 78. Mr CEO, one of our General Managers, would you like to just lead us into this, or do we go straight to it?
I'm fine, Mr. Mayor. The report is literally the report. It's for repeated operators, and it's to bring us to ensure that we're complying with our requirements under the regulation. So happy to take questions or just go straight into it.
Thanks, Mr CEO. So just a bit of background again for those engaging. This report details the legislative requirements for council to enter into a medium or large size contractual arrangement without first inviting written quotes or tenders under section 235 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 for sole suppliers, original equipment manufacturers and suppliers of repeated operational expenditure. There are definitions there. So, for example, repeated operational expenditure refers to recurrent expenditure on goods and services which council experiences at regular intervals that is required for general operations. Of course, the sole source supplier is where they're the only supplier that can provide the goods or services required. And the original equipment manufacturer is a company whose goods are used as components in the products of another company, which then sells the finished item to users, and components are then often required to be used to maintain the warranty or aftermarket parts. So that's an understanding there. As such, we have a recommendation that council resolves it is satisfied that the registers of suppliers for repeated operational expenditure, sole suppliers and original equipment manufacturers contain suppliers that provide goods or services to council where the expenditure cannot be sourced traditionally via quotation, tender or expressions of interest. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter again, a seconder, Councillor Henson. No one else seems to be moving any motions, councillors. I'm trusting you're all keen today. But anyway, we've got the motion there on the table. Councillor Duff, do you wish to speak for or against? Thank you.
I just wanted to ask a question about, is this something that should be form part of our procurement policy, or is it just something outside our procurement policy? I'm just confused about the actual, it's come out since the procurement policy, just where it sits with our whole procurement setup.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. That is per our procurement policy, Councillor Duff. That is per our procurement policy. It is in line.
Yeah, can I just interject, Councillor Duff, if I could, please, just to clarify, we can move on. Look, this provision for such does rest within the procurement policy, so the capacity for council to resolve this is provided for within our current procurement policy.
Then a supplementary question, then why do we need to ratify it again if it's already in our policy?
because what we need to do is actually receive, endorse and ratify the register as such, the actual register which states the names of those suppliers.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all, and thank you, Councillor Duff, for those very good questions. Okay, on to 9.6, resolution for engagement of a consultant for council at 83. Mr. CEO, we've got a report here that indicates that this has come from the Strategic Procurement Coordinator. Did you want to just speak us?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. So we engaged this contractor on an ad hoc basis, and we've got some work through to the 30 June. So it's again ensuring we haven't been to quotation or tender. The values of the engagement through the 30 June may tip a threshold. We're satisfied that this supplier is the only supplier utilising the services we have available, so it's to ensure compliance with our procurement and the regulations.
Okay, so Council, just confirming that this recommendation does leave Council in full compliance with the regulations and with our procurement policy, as stated by our CEO. The recommendation is that Council resolves it is satisfied that it would be impractical and disadvantageous for Council to invite quotes or tenders due to the specialised and confidential nature of the services provided to Council by Rainmaker Strategic Planning. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. A seconder, thank you, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I think some specialist expertise support for council would be greatly appreciated. I would, however, like, because this has been an ad hoc engagement in the past, just some kind of report to come back to council, and I understand it might be in another section of the agenda, but I would like a report to come back to council in terms of what this engagement of this contractor is actually going to, what the rules of engagement for this contractor are and how they'll be supporting all councillors moving forward. So I'd probably like to move an amendment to the motion at hand. Mr. Mayor, just that a report come back to council detailing more information about what this consultant will actually be providing to council.
Council, could I just make a suggestion? Because the first one is to deal with the procurement, so the compliance with the regulations, and so
Sure.
I'd be way more comfortable once we get that through, so that we're actually in compliance with our procurement processes. If you would be, again, certainly not speaking again, it would be just, it would be procedurally as a separate one.
Sure.
Yeah, well,
No
not even procedural, but just as separate, and so we'll just deal with them in two
So
bits.
we'll deal with this motion.
Then I can deal with the procurement stuff and sort it out, and then we can bring the report back happily. Yeah.
That would be
yeah.
great. Thank you.
Other councillors? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to move the motion now? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to move a procedural motion that a report detailing the services Rainmaker Strategic Planning will provide is brought back to council and workshopped for further discussion. Mr. CEO, I'll follow your lead in regards to the wording of that, but that's my intent. I'd just like to better understand the provisos of the engagement with Rainmaker.
Councillor, you could probably drop workshop out, because it may end up, depending on the nature of the report, it may just end up in the closed session, but it certainly can be detailed and brought back to a council meeting, be it standing committee. So rather than a workshop, just if everyone's in agreement, a standing committee is as good as any.
Standing committee?
Yep.
Okay, happy with that, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you,
So
Mr.
we'll take that as moved. Thank you. Who have seconder? Okay, seconded by Councillor Potter. Speakers, if not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, on to 9.7, which is the monthly financial report and third quarter budget revision, can be found at 84. and you have it as presented there. And the following information provides Council's position as at 28 February 2021, including recommendations for the third quarter budget revision for both operational and capital budgets. Recommendation is that the monthly financial report, including the capital works and works for Queensland Round 4, as at 28 2021, be received and noted. That in accordance with Section 173 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the revised 2020/2021 operational budget be adopted, and that in accordance with Section 173 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the revised 2020/2021 capital budget be adopted. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder. Thank you again, Councillor Henson. You're doing a good job over there, seconding these motions. Okay, councillors wishing to speak for or against, or feel free to raise questions. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did just have a couple of questions. The report was very detailed, thank you. My first question, page 93 of the report. Water is currently higher than expected due to the irrigated and bulk water sales. Bulk water sales refer to water purchases invoiced to Toowoomba Regional Council to supply the Yarraman Township. Income in this category is offset by additional revenue for the purchase of water allocations. I just wanted to ask probably a question for GME, and I didn't quite realise this, but does Council's current water allocation actually support Yarraman's water security?
Yeah, yes, it does, Councillor. So I've asked him as part of the standing committee your request about the allocations. He'll give a full run through how that works. So we have a contract in place with Toowoomba Regional Council to supply from the Boondooma pipeline as part of their water supply.
No, thank you for confirming that, and for a report to be brought back, because certainly noting dam levels. I did just have one more question, my apologies. Just on page 97, finance costs. As at the 28th of February, finance costs are tracking below target at 61% due to the timing end-of-year adjustments for doubtful debts and unwinding of landfill and gravel provisions. Bank charges are slightly higher than expected due to an increase in payments via BPay and FPOS. Sorry, this is the part I've got here. Current provision calculations for landfill and quarries is showing unfavourably compared to the budget due to a decrease in the discount rates. This will be monitored over the next few months with the final calculations based on June discount rates. I just wondered if you could explain that to me in another way.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. We workshopped that several months ago, Councillor, with one of our CPAs, our accountants. It is a very technical formula that's used, and it's monitored by that accountant, but I can take that on notice and bring that back to Council to give you the detail on how that is calculated.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you, GM Susan. I think that would be fabulous. And just in terms of page 101, my last question, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Out of the $170,000 in property and rating debts, above that are overdue by 90 days or more. 54,000 is currently with debt collectors, 14,000 are on payment plans, 15 need to have charges reversed due to withdrawn applications. 70K is currently being actively pursued by council staff, and 15K being reviewed to determine if they'll proceed to debt collectors. It says here that council's currently tidying up any outstanding debts to ensure any write-offs or reversals are done prior to the end of June 2021. I know how hard the team work following these up, and particularly I know when I first came to council there was significant accounts that needed to be cleaned up. I see the P&R outstanding and the accounts receivable a constant challenge for council, and we had talked about these levies actually being put on people's rates notices. I just wondered if you could give us an update as to how things are going with that regard, because I'm mindful of how much time and money is spent chasing these accounts, and see that as a great way forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor, this is a legacy, the outstanding debts, and, my finance team has worked considerably hard over the last 18 months to get this debt down, and they're doing a wonderful job. We now have a dedicated officer that actively pursues these debts. We did put the debts on hold over COVID. We didn't pursue debts, but we've now recommenced. The question about the rates, yes, that is currently being investigated. And as you know, on Monday, we went into the SaaS platform. So now that we're up in the cloud within our business systems unit, we will be now doing a full analysis on how we can do our business better. And at the moment, it is under review as far as adding this debt onto our rates notices. So it is a work in progress there, and we're a little bit excited about moving that over there so we can have proper control over it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the response. Thank you, Mr Mayor. No further questions. I'm equally excited about that process and just see, at the end of the day, council has to cover the costs of delivering those services, and when our budget is so fine, whilst they might seem like small amounts, over time they add up. So it's great to hear that that work's happening behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And it is Council's appetite. Council gave us a direction that we would actively pursue every debt owed to Council.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I had one more question here. I did, before I go to that, I just did want to acknowledge the work that the rates team have done and the customer service team have done this past rating period. Every time I walked into the council office, I have to say, in some cases I was very appalled. As a leader of our community, I actually expect better of the residents of our community. And I understand rates are emotive. We all pay rates. We all also pay registration on our vehicles, and we also pay tax. And there's many things as residents of this great country we pay. And what I saw in the council chamber here, the abuse some of our staff copped was really inappropriate and uncalled for. No matter what, nobody has a right to treat somebody that way. Everyone is definitely fair. Your opinions are valued, and definitely put them forward. We need to hear them. As leaders, we need to hear them. But I really do expect better of the residents of our region. And I can't thank that team enough, because their professionalism, the way in which they handled themselves, I myself couldn't have done it. So I'm very, very impressed and grateful for the work they've done. And I urge our community to think about that. The people that you're talking to also live in our community. They also pay rates. They also have concerns and challenges that they're facing. And I really do hope that together, we can change our mindset and actually start to be a little bit more positive about things, because I think we live in a great region and there are great things happening. So I'd just like to thank that team. That was really hard work and they did an exceptional job. My question, just in relation to page 105, I just wanted to ask point 3.2.2, property, plant and equipment. It says the total adopted capital budget for the year was 39.6. Talks about the budget there. I just wanted to ask, the last sort of paragraph, the actual spend to date equates to, so actual expenditure with committed costs as at the 28th of February is 24.415 million, which is tracking below target at 51.9%. And of the 24.41 million, 18.648 is actual expenditure, with the remaining 5.76 sitting as committed costs. The actual expend to date equates to 39.7% of the total budget available. I just wanted to ask, are we on track to meet this? Is this a resourcing issue? Are we struggling to get trades, or just wanted a little bit more information about, we've committed significant costs and it's looking to me like we may not actually meet that actual spend for the year. So just wanted some clarity around that.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, through our area. I'm not sure what the percentage, whether it's worked out on the restricted cash that we've pushed back in the program, what percentage that relates to. As far as the program is concerned for my area for water and wastewater and the Works Department, we will be online to deliver in line with our revised budget for the third quarter. So whatever money has been pushed to restricted now for that carryover period through the financial years has been done through this, and everything else that's has been brought back onto next year's budget. And a lot of that is in relation to the KTP cash flow, which will be represented in Kevin's budget. So apart from that, we are not aware of any projects other than what's been adjusted here that will not be delivered by our group this year or will be in progress through that financial period, which is the carryover amount through restricted cash.
General Manager O'May, anything further to add from your department?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, similar to our department. So we've in the third quarter we've actually made an adjustment of close to about $1.5 million, which are projects. There's $500,000 was allocated as a capital project to be put aside for the for future pool. So this is actually demonstrating that $500,000 is being put to restricted cash. So that's been moved to restricted cash. We also had about $600,000 to $700,000 in building condition priority. So it was funds that were set aside for projects that may come up, that capital funding that weren't actually identified. So instead of looking at that as sitting that as an outstanding capital works project, we've actually pushed that back into restricted cash. So it's basically changing those projects as sitting as a live project that is showing that it hasn't commenced. It's basically just putting the money back into the bank account as restricted cash. So those won't be delivered. We do have a couple of projects where we have pushed back. That'll go into next year's budget. Just our capital works projects. Our concentration is making sure that we are spending the Works for Queensland projects, so the externally funded projects. So from our point, we're actually making sure that those projects are getting completed, which there are a couple of smaller capital projects that we're pushing, that we've identified in the third quarter to push out into next year's budget, so we can complete the externally funded projects.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 120 of the report, the key performance indicators, I see that the current ratio, we're sitting at 5, and according to this, it's because of the rates. We're expecting the rates to come in and the balance will decrease. So I'm just curious as to where we normally sit during a non-rate period for that ratio. And by the way, before you answer that, I must say congratulations on everything else. All the KPIs look amazing.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Council normally, traditionally, the cash ratio, normally we're higher than what's required, and as the Mayor's alluded to, that's not really a bad thing. So that's why we haven't met that criteria at the moment, because we've just levied rates. So we're looking, I think, an extra 25 million is sitting in there. So as the girls say, as we progress, that will drop there, and we will meet then all the markers again, Councillor. So that is not a bad thing to have that higher.
Right, are you happy with that, Councillor Potter? You can take your light off now, thank you. Okay, just a couple of observations for the gallery and the community in relation to those financial statements. First of all, the Statement of Comprehensive Income. It's what you would commonly refer to in business as a profit and loss statement. Treated a little bit differently under local government accounting standards, but at this stage, the amended budget, as recently adopted, projects a deficit for council this financial year of $4.56 million, as presented there. The cash at bank at this point in time on this report, as at the end of February, is $36,270,000. Close to 37 million. That's effectively 78% of that is invested with the Queensland Treasury Corporation, with an interest rate, a monthly interest rate of 0.69%, and the remaining 22% is invested with the Commonwealth Bank. at an interest rate of 0.60%. And of course, the cash rate at the moment, as determined by the RBA, is 0.10%. So it's not far off hitting 0% at all. And then if any of you have got money in the bank, it's going to be a long, hard road in terms of getting any sort of return with the way cash rates are at the moment. In terms of council's debt level, we do have borrowings there shown on the balance sheet of almost $3 million in current liabilities, current borrowings, and long-term borrowings there are shown as $30 million. So we've got about $33 million worth of debt and about $37 million worth of cash. They're just general figures for the benefit of the community. And in terms of that $33 million worth of borrowings, Parks and Gardens, $578,000, Finance, $927,000, Property, $886,000, Economic Development, $366,000, Environment and Waste, $707,000, Infrastructure, $11.2 million, and Water and Wastewater borrowings of $18.37 million. So that's just a bit of an overview for those tuning in. Okay, councillors, any further questions? If not, I've got one question before we'll go to the mover for right of reply. I do have a question, Mr CEO, in relation to Works for Queensland Round 4, where we're very generously granted $3.3 million by Premier Palaszczuk, which has been very much welcomed as a tremendous stimulus for our region, council to spend on projects across the South Burnett. My question is, does the $3.3 million in state Works for Queensland funding have to be acquitted by 30 June 2021? If so, how are we tracking to achieve such? If we are unable to do so, are we able to obtain extension of time from the department? Or would there be circumstances under which we would have to return unspent funds? Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Succinctly, yes, we have that money. I think rather than acquitted, it's probably the projects are completed by 30 June, so we'd have a period of time then for the acquittal. Are we tracking to complete those projects by 30 June? Yes, clear expectation has been given to all staff. They will be done. We'll use other people's money first, and it is an excellent program. Would support you very much in that, and we're very appreciative of it. Are we going to achieve that goal? Yes, we will. If we're unable to do so, will we get an extension? No. And do we want an extension? No. And will we return money? No.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Shoemaker, you moved. You comfortable with that? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We will stop for morning tea shortly, but I'd just like to deal with one more item before we do, and that is item 9.8. Budget committee meetings to be opened to the community via live streaming and gallery attendance at 1:44. Council, bit of background. So the Mayor requested consideration to live streaming budget workshops. The option to open the workshops to all the public will require council direction. Budget workshops are by nature a process to deliver information and seek direction for the formal resolution of council at the budget meeting. Of course, council is very much in the budget process at the moment, and we'll be working through that between now and June, with a view to adopting the 21-22 budget on 30 June 2021. And of course, we have a number of challenges facing us in terms of our operational costs and also our future capital commitments. The recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council 1 establish the following committee for the fixed period 1 April to 30 June 2021, with the following membership and chair in accordance with section 264 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. Budget Committee, membership 7 councillors, chair, mayor. 2, conduct budget committee meetings as listed in the 2021-2022 budget parameters and timeline report between 27 April and 2 June 2021 be open to community through live streaming and gallery attendance in compliance with COVID-19 requirements. It's my pleasure to move such. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those wishing to speak for or against? Thank you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, we discussed this, of course, previously, and I'm happy with this. And the dates that are noted there, April through to June. And I brought it to the members' attention that we are also under 254J in the closed meeting sections, which is listed there at any stage. We can go confidential if that's in the interest of the public, that there's something that needn't be tabled. So I'm comfortable with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to confirm too, just seek the CEO's advice here. The Budget Committee is not intended for and will not be used for the following purposes: removing the need for debate or rating and budget resolutions at the special budget meeting, progressing individual or personal requests, directing what an employee ultimately recommends to a council or a standing committee meeting through an agenda report, or seeking to direct employees' work practices or contravening professional, e.g. legislative and accounting standards, quality, safety or environmental responsibilities. So I guess I read that, CEO Mark, and I saw that very much as our rules of engagement for these committee meetings as councillors going forward. I just wanted to confirm that that's very much the case.
Happy to answer. Councillor, I popped those in there because these are, and you'll notice, actually, thank you for the question, Mr Mayor, if I can just, I opted to, and I think I recall, I hope I did, advise the standing committee that I might play with the resolution a little bit. It's effectively to give the workshops a life as far as a live streaming process. So I was trying to, I thought about what would be the best process. So we'll do up an agenda and it'll effectively look like a standing committee, and it'll give, so council, the committee would recommend back to council. So the normal rules of engagement for a standing committee, officers recommend, which is at the best advice they can give. Councillors are engaged to make the decision. The general meeting is still the actual decision-making body. It gives us the ability, we'll publish the meeting dates. I also went to 30 June. 30 June will be the special budget meeting, as already been adopted by council. It gives the committee a definitive life, so it's a fixed committee, but also gives us the flexibility that if we do need to put a live stream meeting on after the 2nd of June, it gives the committee enough life to be able to do that. So it effectively, there will be, I would suspect, some other discussions, possibly any which way about workshops, but this just delineates it a little bit from a workshop. And also, I suppose long answer short is it does give a bit of a rule of engagement. It's effectively like a standing committee. Officers will bring the information back. Council will consider it. Mayor's quite correct in it. It isn't necessarily delegated or its own decision-making body, but it certainly will allow for that discussion to be aired, put into a public arena in accordance with the regs if there is something that has to be closed. And will be then officers will just continue to produce reports, and we'll knock up an agenda format for it, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr CEO, and of course, excellent question. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And of course, Section 254J of the Local Government Regulations 2012 do provide for a local government or a committee to close a meeting to the public in relation to the local government's budget. So that option will still be there should the need arise. Secondly, as Mr CEO has certainly articulated, this committee as such does not remove the need for debate and budget resolutions to be adopted at the special budget meeting, which at this stage is intended to be held on the 30th of June. By legislation, council can only adopt its budget at the special budget meeting. So any decisions, any debate can certainly, the final decision, the final debate will all very much be held at that special budget meeting on 30 June. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to say that I really support this recommendation. I think it's groundbreaking. I don't think there's too many councils that are prepared to put their budget discussions out to the public. I commend the Mayor for bringing this to the table, because I think ever since we've started this new term of council, we've declared to be far more open and transparent, and with the committee meetings we've done that by opening up those committee meetings where before they were portfolio meetings that were the public were excluded. I know in the last term we were criticised for not having appearing to be open and transparent because a lot of particularly the budget discussions are behind closed doors, and then you just have the big budget day and we haven't taken the community with us, because a lot of times we make decisions as we have to make decisions to form the budget, but the community don't see that, and they don't understand the angst and the stress that it puts council under to try and get it right, because it's very difficult, the challenges of whether to put the rates up or whether to, where we can cut, all of these things. I love the thought of taking the community with us. I just think it's groundbreaking. It's if we can support this today, it's part of the whole new charter of what we're doing here as a council, and I just love the idea of bringing the community with us, that they understand the challenges, the heartache, all of those things that it takes to get this huge thing that is our budget to the table in the end. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us the opportunity to open this up to the community and bring the community with us on budget day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. And look, I'm just going to stand as I do on occasions in relation to this matter, not because I'm grandstanding, but because I would really want to strongly commend this to my colleagues. This is a further initiative by this new council to support the implementation of the Belcara reforms, and indeed the local principle, the key principles outlined in the Local Government Act, where clearly government and I think indeed is responding to the community in wanting to see that councils are much more open and transparent, and indeed through that process more accountable in the way that we deal with matters that affect our community. And importantly, the way in which we deal with the community's money. Of course, we all acknowledge that this is not our money. This is the money of the people of the South Burnett. It belongs to them. Our job is, as custodians of that money, to make sure that we are making the best possible decisions in their best interest as to the utilisation of those funds, and including how we generate revenue through our rating system, how we charge our rates. So on that basis, further to the other initiatives that this council has endorsed, I thank you for your support on those. I would now commend this motion to council. Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll now move that we close the meeting for a break and seek a seconder for such. Seconder, we close. Thank you, Councillor Jones. I can see you're looking for a cup of tea, as I'm sure we all are. All in favour? Okay. Carried unanimously. Meeting now closed at 10:48 a.m. and we'll resume at 10. Adjourned, sorry. I always get that one wrong. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'd be lost without you. Meeting now adjourned at 10:48 a.m. Could I suggest that we resume at 11:15 a.m. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Do I need to reopen the meeting, Mr. CEO? Yes. Now move that we reopen the meeting, re-adjourn. Have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Okay, meeting reopened at 11:15 a.m. Thank you, everybody. Okay, moving on to 10.1, Town and Village entry signage at 146. The recommendation, of course, that's come through is that Council adopts the updated locations and associated works to commence the installation of new town and village entry signs in accordance with the town entry signage catalogue report approved by Council on 18 September 2019. Mr. CEO, is there anything else that we need to add to that at this stage? Okay, do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second, thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors wishing to speak to the matter? No? Okay.
No.
Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that this has been a long time coming. The previous council went to a lot of trouble to get these signs so that they reflected the images that meant something to each individual town. Unfortunately, because of issues around the positioning, they had to be put on hold because they were in spots that were making them look too low and the angles. So I know that the staff have done a lot of negotiation with Main Roads and we're also going to be elevating the signs up. I think that the community will be really happy with the outcome, and it's a long awaited, and I think, yeah, just a congratulations to the staff. I know it's been very frustrating dealing to get it right, and because we've had all the TMR issues, having to negotiate spots and angles, and so I just think the community, and I know the Mergen Business Association were overjoyed to know that their signs are going up and that they will be elevated and angled a bit better towards the road. So thank you for the work you've done, and looking forward to seeing the great entry signs into all of our towns.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Duff, and I can just reiterate thank you to the staff. I know you had to go through a long, involved process with DTMR to get to this point, and looking forward to seeing those signs modified and the new signs installed across the region. I'm sure, very confident the community will be pleased with the outcome. So, to you, General Manager Meehan, and your staff, thank you very much. Great work. Okay, councillors, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to now 12.1, extension to currency period for material change of use, master plan community and development permit for reconfiguration of a lot being one lot into 23 lots plus parkland over land described as Lot 3 on SP 181686 Bunya Highway, Kingaroy, can be found at 169. And just a little bit of background on that. This was discussed at a recent standing committee meeting. Consideration was given to the matter by council, and as such, the recommendation is that council approve a 12-month extension to the currency period under Section 86 of the Planning Act 2016 for preliminary approval for material change of use, master plan community and development permit for reconfiguration of a lot, one lot in 23 lots plus parkland over land described as Lot 3 on SP 181686 at Bunya Highway, corner of Youngman Street and Taylors Road, Kingaroy. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Second, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this approach. I think, and I appreciate the work Council's done to date in actually continuing the conversation about this potential development and what could be on the edges of Kingaroy. So I'm fully supportive of this approach and look forward to the outcomes of those negotiations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 13.1 is at 170. It's the Clark and Swenson development, Southeast Kingaroy trunk water infrastructure, and I've got a recommendation there that council advise the developer that council is unable to advance funding to commence these works due to other network priorities, and advise the developer that they can build their own infrastructure to service their development only. Council, do we have a mover for motion at this stage? Thank you, Councillor Jones. A seconder? Wishing to second. Thank you, Councillor Potter. We might go to speakers now wishing to speak for or against, or invite staff in to add any commentary to that. Might just call on General Manager and Manager to provide us with a little bit of background on this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I might just get Tim just to give an overview of the options which is detailed on the second page of the report. So that's page 171, which is in addition to just there, mate. So I'll just go through the options there. Probably just as way of background, obviously we've been working with the developer for the last couple of months around what was a long-standing approval, is my understanding, from Kingaroy Shire, Peter, if correct. Since that time, we've obviously done a large number of studies on the water and sewage network throughout the areas, particularly focused on Kingaroy trunk infrastructure, and with the forward programming coming together through that MIP process. And obviously there was an overview provided by Tim and his team the other week on some of those projects. With that, the developer, my understanding, has a number of options available to him to proceed with his development. And I might get Tim just to give a summary of those three options on page 171, Mayor, if that's okay.
Yes, so basically, option one is the developer can install his own infrastructure to service their development only with no cost to council. And what I mean by that is he's not sizing that infrastructure to suit future development. It's purely and solely only to service the development requirements of his. And if you look on that option 2 on the schematic, the plan attached on page 174. This is the red line there is the proposed direction for that option for the developer. So he can singly do that. The option 1, which is actually preferable, but it's just not financially available for us at the moment, is for us to work in conjunction with the developer and do some our ultimate planning goal, which is to get the reservoir up on for the Swickers and the likes of that, to expand those problem areas in the network. But that's the ultimate solution. And unfortunately, our financially, that's the ultimate solution will cost us about $8.2 million, in which, as we presented 2 weeks ago, it's something in about 5 years' time is where we will start doing them in sections. Yeah.
So just to summarise, Mayor, our recommendation to council is that you remain on your program, but you won't bring it forward at this time due to the financial implications at this time for council. Council can review the projects in future in accordance with this 10-year program and its development process, at which time when council chooses to, and however council sources the funding for that project, either through internal or external revenue, council can make that decision in the future, and it will remain on that planning as they warrant. So you'll get to a stage where, again, you consider every factor that's available to you as far as your finances, your other priority infrastructure that you need to consider, and our recommendation is that it's not the priority for your water and sewage infrastructure at this time, based on the information that we've presented. Is that?
Thank you very much, General Manager and Manager. So just to clarify, this isn't in our 10-year capital works program through the MIP project, and if a council was to respond to this request, we'd be looking at about $8.3 million in investment required outside of that 10-year cap, in addition to the planned capital works program.
Yeah, just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, there is option 2 is also available, which is 5.4 million. Basically, that is just upgrade the absolute minimum stuff, excluding the reservoir. The problem with both option 2 and 3 is identified with operational problems, and particularly the THM issue, which everyone is aware we have in Kingroy. And it's largely to do with the turnover of that pipeline. So if we install a trunk pipeline, as in option, option 1, I think it is, on the menu there. Yeah, so that orange line, that's a large pipeline, and considering that the development will be in stages, you won't get the turnover of the water out of that trunk main, and so that's problematic. It's the water age is where we get our THM increase.
Councillor Potter.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, how much would this cost the developer if he were to do the infrastructure himself? I've got a couple of questions here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's probably my first question. My second question would be, with this, are we expecting, if the developer does go ahead and put his own infrastructure in 5 years' time when we put our own infrastructure in, will that make his infrastructure devoid, like deleted, no longer useful? So that's, to me, that's just as a point, that's a lot of money that he's going to put in for that. And is there a way we can work with the developer with a contribution from him of the money he was going to put in to do his work, that we can work with him and start on our infrastructure? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll answer 1 and 3, and I'll let Tim answer the second one. Just by way for the developer, so our understanding is the developer's going to construct this in stages. The design that we're looking at, and while we use the MIP program and the forward design program, the solution that we're presenting is essentially the ultimate solution for that region. So you're looking at the pipeline plus the reservoir, which is between 5.4 and 5 million and 8.3 million, thereabouts figures. What the developer is asking is that council would install the infrastructure now, which means council would have to go to either raise revenue or borrow that money in advance now to supply that. Council is well within its rights for the developer to place that infrastructure to self-serve that development at this time. No different from any other development. Otherwise, if council, I'd probably just get the gist of where the question is coming from. Council, by having a priority infrastructure program in a 10-year program, council can choose when it wants to invest and build those items of infrastructure. Otherwise, if you had 40, just because someone's got a development approval, you're going to go and borrow $40 million tonight to enable those developments to be built. The developer has an option, I believe, is in the order between somewhere around the 300 grand mark in discussions with the developer and his consulting engineer, where council, what would happen is, if you were to enter into an infrastructure agreement, I'm happy to be corrected by either Peter or Tim, the developer would give you a contribution towards your $5 to $8 million in lieu of the 300,000. So essentially, council would need to meet what the developer is asking. Council would need to probably borrow between $5 and $8 million for the developer to give you somewhere between $0 and $300,000 contribution to the project. So that's why we're recommending that you fund it at a time when it suits council to do that. Given your water and sewage priorities, our recommendation is to leave that remaining on your 10-year program and council fund it when it's economically viable for you to do so, and it becomes your priority project for you to invest in, and you've got a funding strategy to do that. Just in regards to the developer's infrastructure, I might just hand to Tim as far as the void.
Yes, as far as the infrastructure, it will be redundant once we do. Redundant to a certain degree once we do the ultimate development, but it will be the line itself will still be utilised because it will assist in the turnover of the water through the system. So basically, if you look at that option 1, we would probably on one of the perimeters of that subdivision, we would have a offtake there for that subdivision. And then the option 1, if the developer installed that, would be the exit of that system. So it basically a loop network. So that will actually assist in our turnover and reduce our THMs. So the pump station itself will be redundant, but that's not a huge redundancy. Basically, the pipeline will still be active.
I might just add one more comment, Mayor, if I may. Just in our discussions with the developer, the crux of what it's been is the developer wants to be answered one way or another which way council's going to go with the infrastructure. By council not spending that money now, you are not stopping that development in its current infancy. So option 1 is fully available to the developer, so these development may proceed. What the developer's offering to you is to give you that money as a contribution towards your or a portion of it to the major project, which is between 5 and 8 million. In summary, our recommendation to council is that you would need to seek that money from somewhere, either through borrowings or revenue raising, or however you would wish to seek that. Given your other water and sewage priorities that have been presented to you, there are other higher priority projects for the Kingaroy Water Scheme, in our opinion, at this time. However, you may consider them in future. If Swickers was to increase its productivity and boost its, you would make a decision at a time that council chooses to install that infrastructure. You're not obliged to put it in now. The developer wants an answer one way or the other so that he can proceed with how he wants to do with his development. That's our understanding, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter, and thank you, General Manager. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I direct a question at Manager Tim Lowe. In relation to the ageing of the water and the development of this project, in its full completed stage, is there then an issue with the ageing of the water in the trunk infrastructure?
No, there's not. So in option 1, you'll see there's the initial offtake off Harley Street, Barkers Creek Road. That's where the main comes off. It goes up to the reservoir that is up adjacent to Swickers. It feeds back as a interconnect back to Barkers Creek. But you'll also see the orange line goes down to the south, which is the north, back towards Kingaroy. That is an interconnect back into the system in town. So it will actually have a multiple loop system. And so that's all about turnover. The problem we've got is a small amount of blocks will not turn over a reservoir at this point in time. The small amount of blocks first up won't even turn over the trunk main, let alone the reservoir, and that is the issue.
Okay, so can I just clarify, with a small amount of allotments there, and in the event of putting a station in that would become obsolete and a reservoir, does a reservoir add to or hinder the ageing of the water, or can it be reticulated or recycled? Not recycled, but reticulated.
The reservoir you're referring to, Councillor, the ones that we're proposing to put in the future, they are actually like our Woorollen reservoir. It's the main supply. So that's the ultimate solution to our water supply. One of our water supply issues in the south of Kingaroy is the provision. We currently feed out of one reservoir, and ultimately we need 2 or 3 reservoirs to actually feed that distribution system, and we have a different pressure zone there for that specifically. But yeah, so the redundant line it'll only be the pump station that would be redundant. The line itself would actually still be functional if the developer installed that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Henson and Manager Tim. Councillors, let's go to the vote, or more comments. Councillor Shoemaker, yep, please proceed.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I do have a few more questions in relation to this one. Probably just for GMO May, I was just trying to understand when the development was actually approved and what council had planned to meet the future infrastructure needs at that point in time. The time since in that time since the approval, what other discussions has council had in terms of how it was going to pay for this?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the original approval, I think, commenced back in the Kingaroy Shire days, so it was around just prior to amalgamation, and it did go through a process of, I think that one of the adjoining owners had appealed the decision, so it did have to go through the P&E court, and I believe there was a consent determination through the P&E mediation process made for the approval, which attached a lot of conditions which the adjoining owners would accept. So it has been on the books for a long period of time. More recently, council dealt with it. The original concept was for this development plus the block to the northern side of it. There was 2 actual developments, 2 different owners, and so a lot of the infrastructure works internally, so the water sewage stuff was designed to cater for the 2 developments. Since then, this development's been kept alive through extensions of time. The other one has subsequently lapsed. So recently they've, say last year, commenced doing works for the standalone internal development on this. So there was a change of application and extension of time to keep this one alive. Because the original approval was through the court process, that involved going back there just because the P&E had issued the approval rather than council. So that's sort of what the process has. This development has stayed alive, whereas the one to the north hasn't. As far as the development, so in the LGIP, so this was identified, I think, in 2026. So council has identified this infrastructure work as not being required till then. So Yeah, not fully over the background, but I suppose, that was when it had been identified. I'm certainly not privy to any of the conversations from the last sort of 10 or 12 or years longer as far as with the developer.
Yep. And just for GM, Meehan and Tim, Manager Tim, I just wanted to understand, so my first question is, where do the properties on Harris Road and Redmond Road in that area seek water from? And I also just wanted to understand, in the report, you've also said following the deputation, further consideration has been given to the potential for a smaller component of trunk upgrades to be delivered without the requirement for trunk components inside the existing Kingaroy network. The potential option 4 is a sub-component of option 2, which would incorporate temporary connection between Haley Street and Summer Street mains via western sections of the proposed rising and gravity mains, an additional connection to provide demand at the eastern end of 2 mains to reduce water age, and the construction of a 300mm rising main and 250mm trunk gravity main to the west of Clark and Swenson Road only. It says modelling is underway to consider the benefits and feasibility of the temporary gravity connection, which would be required to support a 15 litre per second demand at the highest point of the development. So, and during the network's peak hour demand in order to be operationally feasible. So I'd like to understand that work that's happening at the moment too before making a decision on this. I'm actually not sure I have all the information at hand.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Probably, can you just give us 30 seconds to just have a quick look at that? And,
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Could we?
Yes, certainly.
Could we have the map back up on the screen? Yeah, thanks, Lionel.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in through you, Mr. Mayor, in regards to the first question about Harris Road, we can supply a map to you for that one, councillor, if that's okay. In regards to the councillor's second question, we'll take that on notice, Mr. Mayor, if we may. I think it might be prudent for us to come back with some further detail, if the council would prefer, particularly around the costing options of that. With why we would do that is to check with our consultant who's doing the design for that to see what the pricing and give a bit further detail of how that mixes with the developed options. So, so we would be happy to bring that information back to the Infrastructure Standing Committee, which is in a fortnight's time, which we can then, up to you, depending on what you want to do procedurally. It's no...
Yeah. I would actually, like to move a procedural motion to leave this matter on the table. I actually don't feel council has all the information at hand, and I want to further workshop and understand this. I think I really commend the work that's happened to date. I can see it's a significant investment for council, but I can also see it's a significant barrier to growth in our region. So I think as leaders, it's only reasonable that we do our due diligence on this one before making a decision and really unpack what that option 4 may potentially be. And I certainly would like to understand what other development in the area, how they're seeking, their water connections. And there's also some information here about other stakeholders that may benefit from early development, delivery of the proposed Southeast Kingaroy Reservoir and infrastructure, and I'd really like to understand who those stakeholders are, what kind of benefit you're actually referring to there, so we can make an evidence-based decision with regards to this request. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Mr CEO, can we accept the procedural motion? Do we have a seconder in that case? Yep, councillor Duff. Councillors in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Mr CEO, we look forward to a report coming back to the next infrastructure.
Yeah, through you,
Committee
Mr.
meeting.
Mayor, we would be happy to bring back a presentation, which was probably the original presentation that we put on the February agenda, I think it was. We'll actually bring the consultant in and step through those options, and that way you can have that. Yep, no problem at all from us in that space. We'll look to put that on the agenda.
Thank you very much.
If we may, Mr. Mayor, we'll just check to make sure that our consultant who's done the design for that scheme is available. If he is not available or his team is not available, can we have the option to push it back to a proper, so that we can give you all the detail, maybe the following meeting if that's the case. I'm just aware that's the first week of I think it's the Easter week. I'm just not sure that that person will be available. If we could either do the April or the May committee meeting, Mr. Mayor, if possible, that's just our feedback.
Look, General Manager, I think Councillor Shoemaker's made some really good points there about the fact that we need to get this one right. Obviously, there's some serious considerations that need to be given to this, obviously in terms of our capital works program, but also the impact it could potentially have on land development in our area where we do have a land availability issue right now. So if you need further time to bring it to the May Standing Committee, I would imagine that Council would be quite comfortable with that. Yeah.
Maybe if we could just list it as the April or May, depending on availability and just completion of the report, if we may. We'll bring it the earliest opportunity, because obviously we want to get it resolved for the developer as well.
So I think take that as done, Mr. CEO. Good, thank you. Okay, councillors, that being the case, we'll now move on to item 14.1, which is the Kingaroy Aerodrome Air Park proposal at 175. We will note, I think we should note that Councillor Shoemaker has provided a declaration into a conflict of interest, but of course Council had previously resolved that Councillor Shoemaker may stay in the room and participate in the discussion and voting on the matter for this air park proposal. Council presented at the Standing Committee meeting held on the 10th of March was a report advising that Council has been approached regarding the establishment of an air park at Kingaroy Aerodrome. These discussions and further discussions with aerodrome users have highlighted a need for a master plan to be developed for the Kingaroy Aerodrome, and as such, the recommendation is that Council commence a process to undertake a master plan for the future use and opportunities for Kingaroy Aerodrome. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. A second. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, as the Regional Development Portfolio holder, I'm really excited about the opportunity to unpack some of these what could be at the Aero Park there. I've done a little bit of research about these air parks and had some conversations with different people in the community who too see them as a great opportunity for growth and a great opportunity for a constant injection of funds for people who may live in Brisbane or on the Gold Coast and looking for a place to fly their planes and aircraft. So I just see this as it's a demonstration of this council's commitment to thinking differently about the resources that we have, the assets that we have, and thinking about the future and what could be. So I'm really excited about this project and really look forward to opening our minds to what the future of the Kingaroy Aerodrome Air Park really could look like, and what opportunities there are for our residents and ratepayers to benefit from that kind of development. So thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. If I can just follow on from what you're saying, this is tremendously exciting for Kingaroy and for the region furthermore. And I'd just like to acknowledge the work that our CEO's done in significant discussions that I know Mr CEO's had with our aerodrome users out there, and getting to this point where we seem to have quite a bit of support developing now for this sort of project, and it'll be good to see that master plan come forward should Council resolve to do so. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, fully supportive of this, and as Councillor Shoemaker has said, this is actually a development that's seriously unique to the South Burnett and to Kingaroy. The conversations I've had, and I know Councillor Shoemaker have had with the people involved in this, and we have an incredible facility out there in our airfield, and there's room there for some great development. This is unique in what it's going to bring to the South Burnett, because there's nothing like it for a long, long way, and we have one of the biggest, I'm led to believe perhaps the biggest glider club in the southern eastern seaboard side of Australia, which is credit to the members out there. We are in a wonderful region where obviously up in the skies it's pretty good to fly around in, but to see the other projects in other towns, and I know there's one down in New South Wales and there's other proposals, they are extremely successful. So I think this has got a lot of benefits for our community, and like I said, it's very, very unique, and I'm fully supportive of this.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, thank you, Mr CEO, for the work that you've done in leading this project, along with you, General Manager O'May, and your staff. Thank you very much. Okay, now the next item, Council, is 14.2 at 176, and at the Standing Committee meeting for Executive Finance and Corporate held on the 17th of March 2021, Council considered entering into a trustee permit for non-exclusive use, lot 900 RP 896938, known as Carew Park. And as a result of that, the recommendation is that the South Burnett Regional Council enter into a trustee permit, non-exclusive use for lot 900 RP 896938, known as Carew Park, located at the corner of Dooncoona Street and Tesmans Road, Kingaroy, for the purpose of landscaping with Bunya Valley Land Care, with conditions including, as stated, as presented there, conditions 1 to 9. So do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.1 is the small business support at 178, and we had presented at the Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting on the 17th of March a small business report, and the recommendation is that the Council support the Queensland Small Business Commissioner Small Business Friendly Councils initiative by signing the charter to support a commitment to small businesses, and further by signing a charter and further liaise with local chambers of commerce to encourage co-signing of the charter to support small businesses in the South Burnett region. South Burnett Regional Council liaise with the Burnett Inland Economic Development Organisation, BIEDO, regarding participation in their business extension activities during Queensland Small Business Month in May by holding 4 workshops for small businesses in the South Burnett region. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Those, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out to the chamber, I'd checked some statistics. There are more than 900 registered businesses in the South Burnett that employ 1 to 19 employees in our region. 900 businesses. That's an incredible, incredible number of people. And I'm fully supportive of this motion. I think it underlines Council's commitment to small businesses and sole operators in our region. And in terms of the charter, it sets the guidelines for Council to engage with and further develop small business in our region. I see we've got a key role in making it easier, and certainly through the funds that we gain through our rates, that we gather through our rates, that are reinvested in our region through small business. I see this just as a continuation of that, and an opportunity for Council to really maximise every dollar that we collect. So I'm fully supportive, and look forward to what's to come from here.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shoemaker. Other councillors? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. The next item is the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee draft terms of reference, found at 180, and of course the terms of reference are there. The terms of reference were presented in draft form at the Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting on the 17th of March, and in relation to this being the South Burnet's first Regional Development Advisory Committee. Mr CEO, just in terms of the recommendation there, if you could perhaps just give us a little bit more detail, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So the draft terms of reference have been represented, and the second point is that as per the membership, the Regional Development Portfolio holder, Councillor Schumacher, is automatically the chair. So the terms of reference look for a second councillor, so we're looking for a second councillor to be on that committee, and then we will go out and seek membership, the other membership of the committee, and there'll be a further update come back to council.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr CEO. So the officer's recommendation is the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee terms of reference, draft terms of reference, be adopted as presented, and that we nominate, appointed a second councillor to the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee. Does anyone have a recommendation to put forward, a motion to put forward? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to nominate Councillor Jones to be appointed to the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee. I think Councillor Jones brings a wealth of knowledge, particularly around his experience in major freight routes in our region and working hand in hand with small businesses across the region. I think we've got an opportunity to do some great work, and I would like to nominate Councillor Jones for that position. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion that the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee draft terms of reference be adopted as presented, and Councillor Jones be appointed to the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee, moved by Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, up to 15.3, which is the South Burnett Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee draft terms of reference at 185. And Council, again, this was presented to the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting on the 17th of March. And again, it'll be the same process, Mr CEO, as previously.
Yep, Mr Mayor, if I may, we did tidy up section 5 of the arts one to bring it into line with the Regional Development Advisory Committee. There was slight variations in the draft, and so through the standing committee process and then the review for this agenda. So Councillor Potter, as the portfolio holder, would be the chair of this committee. So it is to bring up both of those sections so they align the same way, so then we'll be looking for a second councillor. The other difference with the Arts Committee is that, again, we will go out and seek membership and then come back to a further report, but there is already a list of groups that, from the standing committee process, that we will go and seek membership from.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Do we have someone that wishes to put forward, Councillor, wishing to put forward a motion? Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you very much. I'd like to nominate Councillor Duff for this position on the arts. I think she shows a considerable amount of passion for this particular part of business for council, so I think she would suit this very well and work in hand with Councillor Potter. So I would like to move that Councillor Duff be appointed to the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So we have a motion, Council, that South Burnett Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee draft terms of reference be adopted. Councillor Duff be appointed to the Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.4, requesting support through sponsorship for the Gameri Pumpkin Festival at 189. Council, we've got two recommendations here. So a little bit of background. The Pumpkin Festival is celebrating its 25 years this year and is seeking Council's continued support by way of sponsorship towards celebrity chef Jason Ford. And we have two options. Council can accept sponsorship proposal to the value of $1,000, or that we could note the sponsorship proposal for information. Do we have a councillor wishing to move a motion? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that South Burnett Regional Council accept sponsorship proposal of the Gameri Pumpkin Festival for $1,000.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to in the report, it actually says that in previous years, State Member Deb Freckleton and the Federal Member Lou O'Brien normally attend the day's activities with the Gympie Mayor and councillors. That's actually, in the past, it's been the former Mayor, Keith, who was always there. I have always attended and been very much part of the organising and, not the organising, but so much part of participating, like Keith and I have been involved with the pumpkin pageant and all sorts of things. And then I also think that stand that we've had, we get a beautiful spot. And if we support this, it's a corner spot. It's one of the best spots on the whole of the Pumpkin Festival that we've had in the past. I think that South Bend Regional Council has been heavily involved and keen to see us support this, particularly with Jason Ford. He's gets a massive amount of people watching his shows, and I've participated in them. Mayor Keith has in the past. As a former mayor, I think that the report understates our participation in the past, but I think $1,000 is a small price to pay for the exposure that we get, and there's a lot of people from across the South Bend attend that Pumpkin Festival, and it brings, to me, a huge economic benefit to our region with motels booked out and people travelling through to get to that Gameri Pumpkin Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. And just in terms of, I probably didn't provide all the detail that was in the report, but the report does also state that the sponsorship will provide for Jason Ford, as stated, as celebrity chef, promotional stall site for our council, 3 metres by 3.5 metres, a grand street parade participation with a float or group display, an invitational entry for the Great Australian Pumpkin Roll to Mayor and councillors, and I'll be looking forward, Councillor Jones, to see you at the top of the hill with your pumpkin. Presentational opportunity for the Mayor at the main stage presentation ceremony, a visitor exposure in excess of 20,000 people, opportunity for council staff to engage as voluntary workforce as part of team building capacity and community involvement at a grassroots level, region to region between Gympie and the South Burnett. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I know in the past there has been issues with people saying we shouldn't be supporting the Gameri Pumpkin Festival, but I personally believe that Gameri, it's only, 7 kilometres from our border, and I believe this is something that we should be supporting. It does benefit our area, and let's lay down that challenge now, Mr Mayor, for the pumpkin roll.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Looking forward to that. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The two previous councillors have stole my thunder, actually. They've touched on every base. This is $1,000 spend and the significant benefit through to the economy of our region because of the Pumpkin Festival, and Councillor Potter just touched on it. We've had some discussions in the chamber, for whatever reasons in the past, about supporting this Gameri Pumpkin Festival. Yes, they are our neighbours, but we need to get our brand out there, and for $1,000, the significant impact that it will have to spread the word of the South Burnett Regional Council right across the Gympie Shire and the surrounds is unquestionable. And as far as your comments around the top of the hill with the pumpkin, it might lead into a good cartoon or something in the future, mate. So look forward to that.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We all love a good cartoon. Okay, thank you very much. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillors, there are no notices of motion on the agenda, so we'll move on to 17.1, which is the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report at 193. You can see there, as presented, the recommendation is that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 17.2, delegated authority reports, at 194. You can see them as presented there in the agenda. The recommendation is that the delegated authority report be received. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Second. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 17.3, questions on notice at 2:59. Move our way through. 2:59. Okay, so the following questions on notice were received from Mayor at the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting on the Wednesday, the 3rd of March 2021. It's the first time we've done this, Mr. CEO.
Yeah,
So I might hand over to you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, it is the first time we've done this, and probably and through the discussion, I'd be really pleased to hear council's thought whether they should just come back as a pool to the general or go back to the committees that they came from. So firstly, so this one is a bit of a works in progress where through the standing committees we're capturing these now, possibly put into it. Well, not possibly, trying to put them into a database. So we're playing with formats and how to deliver the information back. Previously, they've been emailed around to councillors, and certainly understanding council's direction that they be given their ask in a public forum, that they're answered in a public forum. So today really is a toe in the water while we play with the format and think about how we do them, but also, so the table today literally for information, but whether it's save them all up for the general at the end of the month as just a information report with the other two information reports, or take them back to the standing committees from whence they came.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. CEO. I think before we attend to this, happy to give some feedback around that, that the standing committees, I'd be comfortable, I mean, I asked these questions, I'd be comfortable for them to come back to the next standing committee rather than perhaps, clogging up our ordinary meeting. I think that's the place where we tend to, these days, engage in a lot more conversation and debate and open discussion through the flexibility of the committee meeting protocols. Keen to hear how other councillors feel about that. Council generally comfortable with that? I don't think we did a resolution around that, do we? It's just a matter of mechanics to agree to that. So standing committee meeting questions, then get brought back, taken on notice and brought back to the following standing committee meeting the next month. That being the case, Mr. CEO, I'm happy to move that the responses to the questions raised be received and noted. I'm comfortable with those at this stage. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. Those in favour? Carried. Councillor Jones has voted against. Oh, Councillor Jones, you are voting. Okay, if you don't vote, it gets taken as voted against, Councillor Jones. So I can see you're deep in thought there. But are you voting for that? Yes, so carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Mr. Mayor, well, what we'll do with the ones that if we receive, sometimes they generate their own report to a standing committee question, such as we had today. The ones at the general, well, then we will break up and bring back to the appropriate standing committee. So we won't bring them back to if they're asked at a general, they'll end up at a standing committee. So if you're good with that.
Everyone comfortable with that? Okay, so questions on notice, taken on notice, responses will be brought back to standing committee meetings, irrespective of whether the questions are raised at a general or a standing committee meeting. Councillor Shoemaker, did you have a question?
My only question was just confirming the process. So if we have a question in the lead up to a council meeting and we'd like to give notice of that question, that's still relevant for the general meeting. Is that correct?
I was a bit quick on my button. But yeah, no, always welcome to send them in advance. And if we can get information, we can table it straight at that meeting, and you don't, well, it just saves a report back. But yeah, absolutely. Always welcome.
Thanks very much, Council and Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff, you're looking at me intently. Did you have something you wish to say?
Sorry, I just, I'm a bit of a stickler for process, and I'm just wondering why how we handle them is not included in the recommendation. It's just, to me, then everyone's clear and it's there and we know where
I'll just interject there, Councillor Duff. Would you like to move a motion and in relation to that, and we can record it if you feel it's necessary?
I do feel it's necessary, because then it's a clear direction. This is what we're going to do.
So please proceed, Councillor Duff.
That their questions on notice be brought back to the next standing committee meeting, if they're asked at a standing committee, or the next standing committee meeting.
Councillor Duff, could I help you out there, perhaps to say that responses to questions taken on notice, as a matter of practice, be brought back to responses to questions taken on notice, as a matter of practice, be brought back to the following standing committee meeting unless otherwise determined by council. Mr. CEO, there'll be cases where we might need to give the staff 2 or 3 months.
Mr. Mayor, without being a stickler for process, the matter of questions on notice and their responses is already dealt with in our Code of Conduct of Council Meeting Policies. And that's why there was no recommendation in the
okay.
report, because it always gives guidance and direction. Hence, you have the report today.
Mr. CEO, could you just read that to us, please? What does that say?
Question on notice will be taken and will be tabled at the next council meeting. So the policy is, that's what I was looking at. So the next council meeting is the general. That's why I brought it back there today, discussion. So I can interpret council meeting as either standing or general, given that we've got both now. Happy to bring them back to the general, happy to do. But really it's, you by all means, please pass it, because it's not necessary, is all I'm going at.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO. So I've got the motion there. Have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Potter, someone's going to second it? Okay. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Councillor Duff, and thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, Council, we have officer's recommendation here that Council considers confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012, 18.1, sale of 20 William Street, Kingaroy, 18.2, sale of land, 14 West Street, Kingaroy, and as a late addition to the agenda, 18.3. It's 18.3, it's been dealt with now, hasn't it? Sorry, we escalated that. So 18.3, again, has been dealt with. So I'll now move that we close the meeting, go into confidential at 12:08 p.m. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Meeting now closed, and we'll go into committee. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Meeting reopened at 12:15 p.m. and we have 2 matters on the agenda at 18.1 and 18.2. Recommendation is that Council enter into a standard contract that Council accept the offer that Council has received for the purchase of 20 William Street, Kingaroy for $180,000 subject to finance, and that Council enter into a standard contract of sale accordingly. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Second, thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 18.2. Recommendation is that Council enter into a standard contract of sale to sell 14 to 16 West Street, Kingaroy, being lots 3 and 5 on RP 114402 for $55,000, not subject to finance. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Henson. Second, thank you, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll now declare, with all the agenda items having been attended to, I'll now declare the meeting officially closed at 12:16 p.m. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff. Thank you for the public for tuning in or watching, and have a wonderful rest of day.